are being met. As long as it's not just one-sided, as long as it's not just this, and somebody can look in and take a snapshot of it and say, see, this is wrong, or see, this is unfair, or see what's happening here, this is self-destructive, and not understand that there's a lot more going on. So yeah, a lot of people can see something and they can say, this person's getting a collection going, or oh, he's a player, or any kind of other just mildly disparaging, even if they're said in an affectionate way, sort of things. And to a large degree, I find it's just because they don't understand the mindset and the things that led up to that makes the next step part of the whole. I don't really know how to fix that.
Yeah, one thing you'll hear us talk about also is a term called compersion. Is that's when somebody else's happiness makes you happy. Seeing somebody else happy, whether it's a spouse or anyone else, and their happiness makes you happy, and that is compersion.
Specifically used, though, in the polyamorous lifestyle, mostly in regards to your partner being with their partner,
right,
and seeing them happy with their partner,
and that makes you happy.
Right.
And that makes you feel fulfilled, because it's all part of the whole thing that makes everything work.
Exactly. Yeah, so one thing, and this will be in a later episode, is, coming out, is other people's perception. At my work, I cannot be out. There's no chance of that, as of right now, as far as I can tell. I have a job where it's a fairly conservative place to work, and so I can't be out poly-wise, or pretty much anything in my personal life. Me not being able to be out at work kind of gives me a little less of an advantage as to seeing how other people treat poly. Crow, on the other hand, he's out at work, and so it's he can see how other people treat it, which can be interesting at times. And Jay is a workaholic. She is a stay-at-home mom, and takes care of all the things, and so she is out fully to all our friends and family.
And I make sure that they all treat us equally.
Yep. And so it gets kind of interesting whenever you're dealing with medical stuff, when it comes to the kids, when it comes to the other spouses, or when it comes to dealing with the schools, with the kids in schools and everything else.
We've had to have many meetings with school authorities saying this person needs to be a parent and that person needs to be a parent. And the weirdest thing they come up with is, well, we can't list more than 2 people. And all I can think of is, you do it all the time.
Yeah, for step-parents.
For step-parents, you do it all the time.
Right.
And maybe you put the modifier on there. I don't know what it looks like on their screen, per se. They only have a certain number of spaces, but I know they can do it.
Right.
And so for them to just stonewall it and say they can't is just this weird kind of tipping of their hand of their opinion on the matter.
Right. When it comes to dealing with friends and family, you get a whole assortment of reactions, and they could be everything from them disowning you to, dude, high five, awesome, you get this, you have 2 wives, sweet, or you get,
I have to say though, even that is, I don't really consider that being supportive.
No.
Right, no, not at all.
Because when I say I have 2 husbands, that's seen as weird.
Right.
And almost like
it's a double standard.
Like I'm a slut, or something.
Oh yeah,
like
you're
that.
going to get slut shamed for having 2 husbands.
Oppositely of that, though, it's seen as a weakness in the 2 of you. Well,
Right.
What does this one not provide that now she has to have 2 of them? And it's not like that at all. So from the outside, you get a lot of judgment in those respects. And the only thing you can do is just live your life. And when you feel like people are worth wasting your breath on, or providing your breath to on explaining things, or showing them how it actually does work, or why you actually do have these other people in your lives, then it's
It's, but you do get those people are just as long as you're happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, will they occasionally make mistakes? Yes. will they occasionally say something that just really hits you wrong because you know that's not how you do things, or that's not how you live, or that's not how you identify. Sure.
Right.
But when you can start from the base of, well, as long as you're happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because sometimes when you come out, you find out like who the other people are that are either poly or have some other lifestyle. Once they realize that, hey, there's somebody else like me that that deals with the same stuff that I deal with, that enjoying their life the way I'm enjoying their life, you get, whoa, dude, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Or you get people that are interested in it, like, Riley, how do you do this? How do you make it work? How do you put everything together for it? How do you even talk to your spouse about it? I mean, how do you even get here? Like, what kind of relationship were you in to begin with? And it's either a good thing or a bad thing. Is people think that you got into this situation because you weren't happy in your current relationship, and that is not the case, and that probably shouldn't be the case. If you're trying to escape your current relationship and getting into poly, you're gonna have a bad time.
And people use that as an excuse when things do end up separating, or a member ends up not being part of the polycule anymore. Is that, oh, it's because you're doing these wrong things and you shouldn't be doing this, and you were unhappy in the first place, and that's why it didn't work out, and that's why you had to go and get other people. And that is one of the most frustrating judgments that people try to, throw at you when something happens, instead of when you lose a member of your polycule.
Yeah, whenever you lose a member of your polycule, it's like, well, duh, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things like, no, look, it's a relationship.
Right.
It is. You're not going to have... hey, if you come out poly and you go full force into poly and you're like, cool, I got my first relationship and it works out great, good for you. That may not always be the case. It's like the first person you dated. Are you still with the first person you ever dated? And my answer to that is no. And the other side of the answer is thank God.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing. You have to figure out what works for you, especially if you've been with somebody, or you've been with your current partner for a very long time. You getting out into the dating world is a bit horrifying, and you don't know exactly what you're looking for, or you do, because but then you may compare it to your current spouse. Well, my current spouse doesn't do this, and so it gets kind of...
That's a whole nother topic.
That definitely is
the thing. One major thing to remember is that relationships are relationships. You said it earlier. It's if you're with a toxic person and you are monogamous and you make the shift to be poly, you are now in a poly relationship, and it includes that same toxic person.
Right.
It's not going to fix it.
No.
It's not going to solve it, and your relationship is still your relationship, and your other relationship now becomes its own relationship. And there's a lot of things in lifestyles similar to us, whether you're on the swinging scene or you're in a more loving relationship or permanent friendship or friends with benefits or poly. A lot of times when you're going outside the norm, it doesn't hurt the relationship per se, but it will show you where the faults are.
Right. So you're meaning like having a baby fixes every relationship, right?
Right. Yeah, no.
Wait, what? Huh?
No, it doesn't. It will not
Right.
fix it. It will.
And I guess so. The question, does polyamory work? The answer is polyamory works if you do. If you work on yourself, if you work together, if you work as a unit, if you work within the parameters that you've set down. A lot of times it causes us to grow. And if you're dragging your heels, it's going to create rifts, and that's with anything in life. I mean, if you're stagnant anywhere in your life or your job or you're anywhere and you're dragging your heels on making a change or doing anything about it and not working on creating better solutions, well, then it's not going to work out.
Right. If you're not willing to put the work into it, then it won't work for you. And
Yeah.
it's that simple. I mean, the benefits of polyamory are great, but at the same time, you need to be ready. You to put in the work, because it may expose every flaw you have.
It's a lot of, I mean, it is a lot of work. But to us and for our unit and our polycule,
It's worth it.
It's worth it, and it works. It works for us.
Mm-hmm.
If your idea of a busy day that completely stresses you out and you barely make it through and really need a drink at the end of it is 2 errands, this is not the lifestyle for you. It's
Well, it depends on how you're structured, really.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
some people could totally make that work for them or be in a whole different dynamic. But for us, I mean, our calendar is crazy and it's law. And
that is a whole nother
that's
topic.
a whole nother topic on itself.
because
but-
does polyamory work? I think the question could be answered with it is if you have a good calendar,
No.
or it will if you have a good calendar.
That's definitely a part of it.
Right,
Because you need a good calendar system.
Well, I mean, just take into account all of the. So, I'm sure all of you have been monogamous at one point, even if you were still poly, but you only had one partner. And, take that one partner, the work that went into making sure that relationship was healthy and nurtured and loving, and multiply it by however many partners you have in whatever
well, not only just
degree that you've set forth for each partnership. Like if you are just going to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or if you're going to actually take this person on as a spouse, or they're just kind of your sometime person or whatever.
well, yeah, you're like your LDR, which is your long distance relationship, your Comet.
Yeah.
Even and then that also includes if your spouse or your partner in your polycule wants another partner, and if they want to go outside of your current one, let's say where they have a triad, and it's like, well, I'm good here, or you have a quad where it's 2 couples and you're good there, and then one spouse is like, look, I've been talking to this other person and I'm really having feelings towards them, and so you have to deal with that. Is that acceptable? Is that are you in a closed polycule or are you in an open polycule? And so you have to decide, back to communication.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to work for you? What is going to work for the polycule that you're currently in? And that is big things when it comes to just making everything work for you, is you have to communicate. One of the, and you'll see it on our Facebook page, our profile picture at the time, is love, honesty, and communication. Because those are very important when it comes to making a polyamory relationship work. What happens is that you have to be honest about how you feel. You have to be honest about, and be able to accept the honesty from your partners.
And you have to be able to be honest with yourself enough
very much
to know that you're feeling these feelings and to be able to communicate them. Otherwise, no one else is going to be able to make sense of them either.
And we know how terrifying it can be to talk to your partner or your spouse or whoever it is about polyamory. It is. It can be, it's like, okay, well, I don't want them to think that means I'm not happy with them. I am happy with them, but I really would like to explore this other relationship with somebody. And it could be, it's terrifying because you don't want them to think that they're not enough for you. And that can really be a hard conversation to have.
I think the initial conversation can be very difficult just because there's so much misinformation out there about what constitutes polyamory, so the instant you even start talking to it or start dropping hints in that direction or start trying to set up the conversation is, oh, Bill wants to open our relationship.
Right. Yeah, I want an open relationship.
No, that might not even be where you're going or what you're trying to say. But people will have their preconceived notions that they bring to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have a whole flood of pre-programming that comes in with that, where every show that you've watched, every relationships you've encountered in person, maybe you've come from trauma and different things and similar situations, but they're very different. And so you start being flooded with all of these emotions and memories and pre-programming that society does, and it makes it it makes it harder if you haven't preset your conversation we find it easier to say to each other when we're having trouble